And welcome to Breaking the Silence pre-premiere show. Tonight's a doozy, the whole half hour. I'm starting to worry less about attention span of the audience and just spilling my guts more, and the guts of other people who are coming forward as well to share their stories. We're not going to worry about how long they are. If they go over a certain point, we will break it into two parts. But, we're not concerned with algorithms and clickbait and likes and all that kind of stuff. We're just trying to help. A little somber today, because last night, and I know some of you read what I wrote in Substack. I also put it in the community to read, and I put it on the forum. And, let's see, where do I begin? I was on YouTube and I was researching about something I was working on. And YouTube kept throwing scenes from oh God, what was it called again? I'm drawing a blank on it. The Fourth Kind. And, I knew I thought I'd seen it before, but it was a really long time ago and I had mixed feelings about it. So, but when I watched the clips, it seemed new to me. So, and the clip that I saw was very effective. It was very good filmmaking. You can say what you like about the film, but the filmmaking itself, the cinematography and the way the camera moved to the doctor and then back to the patient, and then it would move back to her, and then it would move back to another patient, all at the same time. It was seamless, and each one of them was talking about the owl they saw in their window, just staring at them. So I cooked this sort of as an omen, and I said, geez, maybe I'm supposed to watch this. And it was getting close to bedtime, and I told Mary, I said, look for it. We found it. They wanted us to pay for it, which, remember the good old days when they didn't charge you to see movies that had been out for that many years? But now they want to charge you for everything. And I don't mind paying sometimes, but other times it's like, no. So we found it on YouTube. Of course, it had commercials with it, but fortunately the commercials didn't interrupt the scene that I was kind of unprepared for. The scene was where she was interviewing and had under hypnosis the people, in particular one gentleman who completely looned out. And the thing about it is that, and I wrote about this, and this is what I wrote about in my Substack, because I think it's really important, is we tend to we've had a lot of experience with this subject matter in our personal experiences with it, and we've dealt with the ridicule and all that other stuff. That stuff doesn't bother me. I don't care if someone believes me or not. They haven't had my experience, but for whatever reason, their ego can't accept anything outside the realm of what they know, including some of the latest breakthroughs in science, which they still deny, but we won't go there. So that stuff just is not important. But what was important is that, I think of myself as being someone who's had a lot of experience since I was a little kid with this subject matter. And then more recently in the 90s, working with Yvonne Smith and close friends with Whitley and Roger Lear and Yvonne and a myriad of other people. And we've all talked about this and even experienced some of these things together. But whenever the screen has my attention as it did, and I'm watching what's happening, and it's so well performed. I've been there. I've been on that couch, and I've been taken back to something that my mind, for the most part, blotted out. And in fact, the first one that Yvonne and I did, I saw the being, but only briefly, and then it was over. And we couldn't get past it. Everything else was blocked. Maybe if we went back now, we could get more. But the thing is, as I was watching the fourth time, watching these scenes, I felt the absolute helplessness. I felt, you know, here I was, this proud little human, and and I'm an astronomer, and this and that, and I'm connected to all these things, and I feel I can handle it. But the emotions from that first, second, and third, and fourth time, and so on, of actually coming face to face with something so extraordinary are still there. And I wrote about it, and I said they'll never go away. And I was trying to control my emotions as I watched it, and tears were running down my face, and I was literally felt like it was going to come apart at any second. And this is what, more than anything, tells you this is real. Because why the hell else would I respond that way or react that way? If it was just a fantasy, it wouldn't have that kind of guts, wouldn't have that kind of power. I remember the first time I watched the UFO incident. If you've never seen it, you need to see it. Yeah, I know it's an old Universal movie that was done back in the 70s with James Earl Jones and Stella Parsons. And it was dead accurate to the book because I had read the book. I read the book, and when I saw the film, I was amazed because it stuck to the story. It didn't elaborate in any way. It didn't try to sensationalize it in any way. And when Barney was talking about the bunny in the bushes, that just really got to me. But when Betty saw the beings coming and she was counting them, 1, 2, 3 men, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 more men, and then she just broke into hysterics. I was watching this the first time with people. I had to get up and I have to go to the bathroom. And at that time, I really didn't know what was going on because that was way before communion. And later on, with my late wife Julia, we were watching it. She wanted to see it, so we watched it. I thought it'd be okay because now, by this point, I had read communion. I knew Whitley. I thought I was comfortable with it. I absolutely fell apart again, and Julie literally got mad at me and said, "What's wrong with you?" and all this stuff. And I said, "This tears at my soul. It really is something that's happened to me, and that you don't have these experiences." And she went at me, and we got in a big fight, and it was just awful. I still don't think I could watch that film except maybe by myself, and even then. So I'm trying to think to myself, am I still terrified of this, even though I know they're not trying to harm us? And I liken it to the fact that in each and every one of us is that very frightened little hominid in the cave. And we still act on those things. They're innate. And I'm getting a 60 cycle hum out of nowhere. What the heck? It's coming from one of my computers. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's odd. I'm going to go shut it off. Hang on. No, that just added to the weirdness. And as human beings, we're creatures that have potentially we're of high intellect compared to the rest of the animal kingdom. We can think and we can reason and we know how to push buttons and so on. But at the same time, we still have that primitive animal inside of us. And when it gets frightened and it gets scared, no matter what the reasoning is, you're going to feel that. And I think it's really important that we have a great amount of control over that as we can. Because if we're to really come face to face in this alleged disclosure, I called it more, Whitley got it right. What we need is communion, not disclosure. And we certainly don't need them to tell the entire world all at once at one time that what you and I know. Worse off, even show them bodies or craft. Because honestly, I think the vast majority of people would literally loon out. I mean, look what's going on in the world right now without them having that knowledge. I mean, just recently we found out that from Webb that galaxies moving away from us beyond the Hubble ring are moving faster than light. These are facts. This is not fantasy. This is real. And this really changes how, at least I know, the scientific community and the great thinkers of the world are seeing things. They're starting to realize that things are way out of beyond our concept, our understanding. But we will understand it one day. But the fear can just completely stop us from thinking. And I felt that last night watching the show, and it just had a big effect on me. It doesn't change how I feel about all of this, but it reminded me of who I still am, regardless of the knowledge I have and that we have. So again, you know, I keep getting emails from people wanting to know why this is all happening. And that's one of the common ones. I got another one today. One of them was speaking about someone we know of. I'm not going to say names, who's has regard for what the visitor's doing as being a threat. And I really feel bad for that person because, again, they're acting on the very fear that I thought of. They're thinking about their safety, about how this affects them, that they can't possibly be doing something that's good. But if you can't step aside and take a look at this with different eyes, then really, I think all they're trying to do is shock the monkey. It's like the song, "Shock the Monkey to Life." Get us to think, get us to wake up, get us to move out of that and into higher consciousness. Because the minute we do that, the minute we'll stop and say, what the hell are we doing? And we're arrogant. And I did write about, in the same article this morning, about Gene, who I knew and who I worked with in Star Trek. And it just, you know, that whole episode where Picard says, Q, we don't need you. We don't need your help. We're ready for anything. And he says, oh, you are you? And he waves his hand. And the next thing they know, they're millions of light years from where they were, sitting in front of a Borg cube, which is cutting them up like a Christmas roast, literally moving a section of the hull and killing hundreds of people. And they were in just absolute terror. No, they weren't ready for anything. It's interesting. You know, I often thought that Q was kind of representative of the visitors or a type of visitors, because how he was as he played with us, but they're kind of playing with us too. We think we know things and they show us that we don't. But we can learn. So that was, that's sort of been sticking with me ever since last night, because I guess I just really wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready to find myself shaken up that way. So that's all I have to say about that for now. And I got to shake out of this mood I'm in. But about tonight's show, it's about something that happened to me back in 1978. Again, pre-communion, but that it just blew my mind and changed the way I saw us or any spiritual being for the rest of my life. And, you know, I know that they were involved with it. I just could feel it. To be completely honest, I could feel it. I'm sure that a lot of you are very sensitive to um, disturbances or spirits, or um, if you walk into a house, you know there's something wrong with it, that there's something that isn't right. We went to a friend's house recently that we walked in and everything seemed fine in the front living room, and we were sitting there, and then we started seeing things. Now, when I say seeing things, for the longest time when I would hear mediums and clairvoyants and stuff say that they could see people or spirits, I always thought, well, they were looking across the room and they could see them standing there. It's not like that. And the older I get, the more I've been dealing with this experience of my own, the more this ability seems to be opening up to me. And when I was in the house, I literally could see this woman. I could see her, but it's not like she was standing in front of me, but I could see her, and she smiled at me, and I could describe her to you in such detail. Well, eventually we went into our friend's kitchen, and when I walked in front of the stove and the counter there, I thought that the floor was becoming rubber. It felt like it dipped and had a bow in it, and I looked down and there wasn't one, and I was feeling very uneasy and very kind of sick to my stomach and dizzy. And I had felt this before many times. Mary felt it too. And there was very much something going on in that very, very location. And the minute we walked out of it, I felt better. But the more that I experience these things, the stronger it seems to be getting. And I don't know if this has something to do with the evolution of this whole experience, and if many of you are experiencing these same things or not. We may have been doing so for a very, very long time, and we just brushed it off and said, oh, it's just our imagination. We're always told that. From the time we're little kids, we have a great imagination. But Mom, I saw something in the corner, and no, you didn't. You get told that you're just imagining things for that long after a certain amount of time. It sounds like the building's being taken apart as I'm sitting here. It's really a weird afternoon. And you start to believe it. And when you start to believe it, you start to enforce it. But when you also learn to open up again, it starts to flow in, and you start to see more and experience more and sense more and more and more and more. And that's what's happening. So I think this is part of the evolution of the experience. And what we're supposed to do, what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to work with humanity and try to get them to at least start thinking about the things they never have had, or they claim to have never had time to think about, while they're too busy trying to put food on the table. And it is, I mean, if you talk to people, it's like they don't even know what Webb telescope is. They don't care. A lot of them don't even believe we went to the moon. But if we can get them to at least look at the stars, and unfortunately, this day and age, if you live in the city, you don't see many. But you could show them the ISS video that was shot with the night vision camera. You can imagine being on the dark side of the earth where you can see billions of stars like you can on the surface at all, and then taking a night scope, a color one to it. I watched the video. It was absolutely mind-blowing. You could start there. I used to show things like that to my late wife, and it frightened her. It scared her. She didn't want to think about that. She was surrounded and immersed in that immensity of stars. It scared her to death, let alone if something came through the wall with black eyes and said hello. So you start there, baby steps, and get them to consider, get them to question, and not take the word of other people. Just tell them there's nothing to that stuff. Because it's going to take a long time. And they eventually will have to have their own experience with the unknown before they'll accept it. Because I'll tell you something, it's my belief. It's just strictly my belief. This is my own thing. If disclosure is to happen, they release pictures. Look, here's the saucers, here's the bodies. Yes, it gets verified. That's what they want from disclosure. They want that stuff to come out on that level. They want people to know that we're not alone and we've been visited and all that. That would probably be okay, because 90% of the people in the world don't even watch the news. If they did, they wouldn't be making the decisions they're making right now, especially at this very moment in time. Some very poor decisions, but they don't ask questions and they don't look into things for themselves. They go by hearsay and the general consensus. So chances are, no matter what gets released disclosure-wise, not many people are going to take heed of it or pay attention to it or even care or be bothered or believe it. But if suddenly they're forced to confront for themselves the fact that there is an intelligence here, I'm not quite sure they'd handle it well at all. So why are the visitors here, and why are they doing what they're doing, and all that? Well, I think a big part of it is that we've all been kind of enlisted, because we were the ones that, when we were little kids, went out in the backyard and looked at the stars and said, "Is there anybody there?" We bought telescopes instead of footballs. We studied science. We watched science fiction. We knew there was more. And somehow they knew we knew, and they were attracted to us, or we've been part of some process all along that was involved with them. But it was, I believe, to try to get us to evolve so we survive. I mean, for all I know, maybe they even started us. I mean, 2001 suggests that, the movie 2001. I often will say it all started with the monolith. They kind of did. No, PTSD, yes. I know, Catherine. I guess I have it, because it just took me over. It was like, wow, I don't really have that much control over this, and that's not a good feeling, because you could be somewhere in a situation, as I was watching Barney and Betty Hill film, and I had to leave the room. I didn't want people to see me like that. I was worried they'd think I was nuts, or, well, what's wrong with him? You know the drill. So it's not hard to be private about this, really, but it's not easy either. So going back to tonight's show, it's about something that I was on the fence about, had a real strong feeling was a reality, but was on the fence. And so someone very dear to me gave me one hell of a gift that I'll never forget. So that's what it's about. And it begins kind of back around the time I was writing a movie called Vortex. Vortex is, the interesting thing about it is, I know some of you have watched The Day Time Ended. Originally, it was entitled Vortex. And it was sort of a miraculous thing. I had met Charles Band. He's made all kinds of low-budget pictures. He's infamous in Hollywood. I appreciate him because he gave me a lot of opportunity. He was sometimes difficult to work with, but overall, I'm very appreciative to start he gave me. And what was amazing is I did the movie Laser Blast. If any of you've seen it, I bet you have. In the beginning of the movie, there's an alien, and he's got a gun and he's hobbling across the desert. That's me. And this ship comes down with these two kind of turtle-looking creatures, and it stalks after me, and they kill me, and I'm vaporized in the beginning of the film. I also did all the effects, makeup effects for it. V worked on it with me, and I also built the gun and the pendant and a lot of other stuff. But this led to something else. I was working on a film idea that I wanted to show to Charlie, and he caught wind of it. He wanted to see it. And my friend Paul Gentry and I worked together, and we made a sizzle reel. It was about racing in space. Someday it'll happen. And he liked it, but he thought it would be too expensive to do because it was a lot of effects. And this is in the late 70s, and it was harder to do effects, space effects back then. We were working with optical printers and hanging things from wires and stop motion animation and everything we could to make these things happen. And it was expensive and time consuming. So he said, which is kind of funny. So he says, this is a great idea, but give me something else. Just bring me back 2 pages and let me look at it, And I said, okay. So I went home and I came up with this idea about this architect who was retiring, and he wanted to build this beautiful house, and he built it out in the middle of the desert for the peace and the quiet. And little known to him, he built it on top of a vortex. There's many of them on the planet Earth, but he built his house right on top of one, not knowing. And so he has family out there, and things start getting really weird. And so he really liked the idea. So he said, okay, you're hired. Go home, write the script. And I wrote the script with my friend Wayne. I just couldn't believe it. It just all of a sudden I've got a movie, and I'm like 24 years old, and we had an $800,000 budget. That was a lot of money back then. So here we were working on it. And one night we were working on the film, on the script, and my friend Wayne nodded out in front of me. He doesn't remember this. I do. This is typical. I've been with my friends in situations like this where they have no memory. And one of them had the memory for a while and told my late wife about it. And then 2 weeks later, didn't know what she was talking about. So it wasn't just me imagining things. And you'll see what happens in the film. But I think that it's possible that whatever I'm dealing with, this non-human intelligence, had some sort of influence on the film. And if you watch the film, you can definitely see it. It's all through it. And they did their best to hack up my script into, a dummy script, as I like to call it, because when they got hold of the script, it was somewhat intellectual and sophisticated, and it did a lot to explain what was going on, and the explanations were somewhat scientific. And of course, when you give a TV writer gets hold of your script to rewrite it, because that's what they always do, they just start pulling all that stuff out because they don't understand it. They don't think the audience will either. So, despite all that, the film kind of held together. And to this day, people still love it and talk about it. And that's amazing. If you watch it, you'll see. Original story by Steve Neal, produced by. And I also worked heavily on the special effects with Paul Gentry, Phil Tippett. I think Lane Lisko was involved in that. Dennis Murin, Jim Danforth, and of course Dave Allen, my dear friend, headed up the whole production. He was an amazing man. He was a really sweet, great guy. Randy Cook was involved in that production too. These are some of the greats that did a lot of work for Star Wars and other great films. And there we're all working together, getting our start on this low budget film that I wrote. It was quite a time. But also during that time, there was all kinds of weird stuff going on. And I couldn't even fit it all into the half hour you're going to see tonight. But I got a lot of it in there, at least the stuff that I thought was most significant. So it was, I'm looking over at the at the comments, so some of you actually know about Charlie Band, and I see that Groucho, that you had an influence. Had an influence on you. Wow. Well, I guess it had influence on a lot of people. I also worked for Larry Cohen, and I worked on a lot of his films, 6 of them altogether. And then I also worked for for Roger Corman for a number of movies. One of them was Battle Beyond the Stars, which had an all-star cast in it, and it was a big deal. Oh, thank you, Joe. You're very sweet. So that, I did a lot of those before I went on and started working on the big backlots and Star Trek and Ghostbusters and all that kind of stuff. But all during that time, there was some pretty amazing things going on, and I did not connect the dots at all. I didn't. I just thought what was happening to me were things that I was seeing, and other people were seeing them too. I didn't know I was directly involved. Even after The Gift itself, I really didn't know. It wouldn't be to a few years later, when my late wife brought home communion, that I went, aha, the light bulb went off. So that's what you're going to see tonight. We have, I think about 6, 7, 8 people lined up all of a sudden. A lot of this is thanks to Earl Gray Anderson, my dear friend, who's been state director for MUFON, who's been connecting us up with people. A lot of these people knew of our work and had seen the shows, but when they found out that they could tell their stories and go on camera and have me do the things I do with my visual effects, they really wanted to have it done. Some of them said, most of the things that have been done on them or have been done on other people, they felt were cheesy. And it is interesting that a lot of the people that have a lot of money and networks and bigger producers and stuff doing this kind of material, they don't put a lot of time into, they have good cameras and good camera people, good sound and all that stuff. We have that too, but they don't, their visuals are kind of cheesy. I guess that's a good term for it. When I was watching the Netflix series, and they were talking about the Pascagoula case, I just thought that the graphics and the reenactments that they did visually to give a sense of what those 2 men experienced were not very well done. And it's because they basically, look, if you go to someone like me or anyone else, they're going to want to be paid pretty well to do this work. It's hard. And I spend hours and hours and hours sitting there. Like right now, we've got one show that we're going to do. And it begins with this woman's story of driving down the desert and being stopped on the road by jackrabbits. And my camera just went out again. Isn't that something? Start cam. There, it's back again. But it's now on the wrong camera. So we're going to fix that. I don't know what's causing that. There. Anyway, at least I've learned how to get around it. It's something happens and it bumps my camera. So her car is stopped because there's a bunch of 3.5 foot tall to 4 foot tall jackrabbits standing in the road. Now, we all know that jackrabbits don't stand in the road, and they're not 4 feet tall. So you know where this is going, and I don't want to give it away any more than that. But so right now I'm working on a wireframe, sculpting digitally in Blender, a very strange looking jackrabbit. I could just go on the internet and find someone who's already built one, a CGI artist. There's a lot of people out there. They just make wireframes. They make characters that you can animate, and they put them up for sale. And some of them are quite good. But I really prefer if I have the time, and I do have the time um, to make my own and do it. And because that way it's really your work, and you can really tailor it to exactly what you need. It's not just good enough. So I'm working on that right now, and it's getting to a point now where um, it would be great to have some financial backing for this project because it's really grown. But with that always comes conditions. And I don't want those conditions. I don't want to be told what to do or what they think I should do or what they want because it's their money. And I get that. It's their money. So not unless someone comes along that wants to help with money so we can do more. And what that would mean is I would be able to get another artist to work with and be able to help me do more work in less time, or maybe even do more work in the same time, and increase the quality level. So it's really hard doing it all myself. I mean, right now, the computer over there has a. I spent 2 weeks building a stretch of country road going through the forest, complete with falling leaves, birds flying over, real asphalt, real guardrails, a Morgan, a 2-seater Morgan, with the guy sitting and driving down the road towards his cabin that he's going to stay the night in. And this is for the film I'm working on called 3 a.m. And I had to build a cabin. I had to decorate it. I had to put in all the furniture and stuff and make it look lived in. I had to make all the terrain around it, the hills, sides, the trees. And I got some really great plugins that allow me to do skies like I've never been able to do. Skies with the actual Milky Way and the right positions of all the stars. I can have any time of day or night I want. I can have any kind of clouds I want, any kind of conditions weather-wise. I can have rain. It could be dripping on things, causing puddles on the ground, you name it. But again, I spend hours and hours doing this stuff. So it's and with what you're going to see tonight, and I spent a long time doing it, and it's still not what I wanted. It could be, in my opinion, better. But I keep doing the best I can, hoping that I'll run into somebody who also has these experiences, who also works in Blender and Unreal Engine, and would like to help contribute and assist in this great project of sharing with the public and with you what it's like to experience this phenomenon as accurately as possible, not the way Hollywood sees it. Otherwise, everything would look like fire in the sky. You just make a bunch of creepy looking aliens and hold some guy down on a table with a bunch of rubber dental dam and slime and dead body parts everywhere, and make it all creepy and post-apocalyptic. And boy, would our ratings shoot up then. It's kind of disappointing, what actually sells. I remember trying to get a project off the ground that was about this and trying to raise money for it. And, the money people looked at the grays and that's the way they look. That's boring as hell. You needed to have something scarier than that, And I think it was this drawing that was one of the ones I showed. Let's see. Do I have it here? I think I do. I don't. What do you know? It's one of my favorite pieces, but I can find it. It's not hard. Yeah, and it's just. But I said, well, that's the way they actually look. No. That's not the way things work. We need to be able to get people into the box office. That's never going to bring them in. So that's what I was up against. And yeah, I just that picture just has escaped me somehow. It's one of my I found it. There we go. And oh, come on. There. And honestly, that comes the closest practically to anything I've ever done. Look at their arms. The fingers aren't long enough. I can tell you that. But look at the shape of the torso and the arms and everything. It is, I don't know, it's amazing that anything can be built that way, and how that neck can even support that head. But you know what? When that says 2019 on it, that was done in 1993. If you look down in the corner, you see that's just a watermark. You look down in the bottom, you see Steve Neal in 1993. And I had when those pictures were shown around by Yvonne and in the magazines and on television stuff, I had people writing me all over the place saying that's what I saw, and no one will believe me. But it wasn't good enough for the money people. They just thought that was ridiculous. So, needless to say, we never got it off the ground. Recently, I've been working on this, and this is Blender 3D. This is where I sculpt and make the wireframes or the meshes, and this is not fully textured here yet. Here's another angle on it. And this is one of the newer grays that I have done for the show coming up. But also the reason it's cut off like that is that I'm going to be 3D printing with a resin printer one of these up. I'm kicking around the idea of offering the bus for something to collect, and that people can watch one of our shows, and if there's something that they liked, they'd like to own a part of it or have a memento or add it to a collection, they could have that particular being. I was thinking of doing the communion one because Whitley has given me permission and has for years to replicate that image. I'm the only person he ever gave that permission to. Well, thank you, Whitley. And some, the praying mantis type and a few of the others I was thinking of doing, and charging a reasonable price so that people can actually get these things. But that's one of the ones I'm working on. And now, how do I get it off the screen? I did something wrong here. There, got it back. So I've been working on that, and working on a jackrabbit. Yeah, okay. I've seen. I remember one of them, the female, removing the black overlay from her eye, and there was an iris definitely underneath there, and it was beautiful. And I think there's more going on with the black eyes than just protection. I think also they're somehow getting some kind of technology in them that helps them see in the dark and helps them get information. And I mean, I don't know if they have computers or not. Probably everything that they have in their technology is alive and has a brain. Maybe that's what you call a computer. I don't know, but it feels that way. I don't know if that's the case, though. It's just a guess on my part. In one of my encounters, a cover did get knocked off. It got knocked off, huh, Dennis? Wow. Yeah, look at the direction that our computers are going in currently, and it, we're talking about mixing bio with electronic, and I know there's work going on with that. And eventually it's going to become more and more like that. And then eventually we're going to get to a level where we can pretty much grow anything we want. And it'll be biological much more than it will be inanimate. So it's very possible that their crafts are that way and they're able to interface with them, and that's how they control them. I don't know. It's just a guess. It's more than a guess. It's a feeling. So how are you guys? What's going on out there? Are things going on? Are you having encounters? And why is it saying my battery status fully charged? Oh, for a minute, I thought my battery was dying. All quiet on the Western Front. I know stuff's going on with me, and I know they're playing games. You know, the game of waking up and the covers are rolled off me again perfectly, the same way each time, and you know the feeling. But how come I'm not remembering stuff? I do remember little bits. I remember the other night seeing a person that didn't look like a normal person, and it's a long story, and we're running out of time. So, oh yes, Rachel, you put a post up of that in our forum. Saw a couple of UFOs, a few days with friends, lucid flying dream the other night. Yeah, I hear a lot of people talking about getting weightless when they're not dreaming and being pulled up into the sky lately, and it's amazing how similar they are to the dreams. So we don't know a lot about reality, do we? We really don't. We think we do. There's a lot of people who tell us that they know, but they don't. If they did, they would have known that galaxies were moving faster than the speed of light, which would have saved them a lot of trouble of trying to figure things out they thought weren't possible, like traveling faster than light. And the more we look into the dark out there, and the more light we see reflected in those many lenses of that Webb telescope, we're going to learn more and more and more, but they're not sharing it openly with the public. And what I mean by that, you're not going to see it on the local news or the nightly news or the national news. They don't care. They're not interested. They're only interested in one thing right now. So, but I mean, when I heard officially that galaxies were moving away from us at speeds faster than light, the further they got out, I mean, that's just one thing, but it was enough that it really stopped me in my tracks. That's huge. That's amazing. And then the other thing, you know, we always thought that things were expanding from a center point in the universe. We also thought we knew how big the universe was. We don't. It doesn't look like there's any into it now. And on top of that, things are not expanding from a central point. Everything is expanding from the point you're at that time. And every place, every star, things are expanding away from the middle of that star. Everywhere you go, which kind of means that the Big Bang probably didn't happen. So what did happen? So it's something to think about, and we really need to think about it. And we really need to think about these things every day and expand our consciousness. And yes, we need to have a life. We need to love each other, our families. We need to work. We need to survive, but we need to also live in a world where our minds are expanded to the limits of this universe that there probably aren't any of anyway. You're part of that. You're part of that. You have to live that because it'll enrich everyone's life. And I think that's where we're going to end it, because Judy is here and in the building. I can hear her, and I need to say hi. And then we're going to watch the show with all of you, and we'll see you in chat. And thanks for being here tonight. And thanks for allowing me to, I feel a little better to get that off my chest. Now I got to go back and finish watching the film. We stopped halfway through and went to bed. I love you guys a whole bunch. And we will see you in chat in a little while.